They called it a birthday dinner. White tablecloths, tea lights trembling in their jars, a waiter who said ma'am like it cost extra. My daughter-in-law raised her glass and with a smile that could slice skin, announced to the whole room, "This is your last meal before you move into assisted living." Forks froze. My son stared at his napkin as if it might explain how to be a man. I set my wine down so gently the stem did not dare ring and said, "And this is your last meal, living in a house of—" I did not shout. I did not cry. I just watched the colors drain from her face while the candles threw gold at my pearls, the ones my husband gave me on our 20th anniversary, the ones she once called dated. The waiter stepped backward as if fire had licked the table. Somewhere near the bar, someone whispered, "Did she just—" I stood. The room slipped into a hush, thick enough to cut. "Tomorrow," I told them, "you will understand." Then I left cash for the check, the kind of thing women do when the men they raised forget how. Outside, the night air was winter bright. I could taste metal like a key on the tongue. At home, I dialed a number I know by heart. "Edward," I said when my lawyer answered, "it is time." Here's what they never imagined. The forgetful widow they were shipping off like old furniture owns the house they sleep in, the water that runs through their fancy shower, the roof that keeps their gossip dry. By morning, the only move being made would be theirs. Tell me this, what would you have said over dessert? Because dignity eats last and never begs. Remember that. The morning after the dinner, I woke before the sun. My body was still heavy from the wine, but my mind was sharp, clearer than it had been in years. I brewed coffee the way Robert used to like it, strong enough to sting the tongue, and set the mug on the table where a neat pile of folders waited. Documents I had guarded like relics, deeds, receipts, statements that told a story Kiara and Jason never imagined. As steam curled from the cup, I spread the pages across the wood grain. Maple Street, Oakwood Drive, 2 apartments in the downtown district. Each title carried my name, the quiet proof of decades of careful decisions. Robert and I had never lived loudly, but we lived wisely. We let people believe we had only his pension and my teacher's retirement. That illusion was safer. Until last night, it had also been unnecessary to correct. At 9 sharp, Edward arrived. His shoes clicked against my tile, his briefcase already half open. He greeted me not with small talk, but with the gravity of someone who had waited for this moment almost as long as I had. "It's time, Eleanor," he said, accepting the coffee I poured him. "You've been patient longer than anyone should." I told him about Kiara's announcement, about Jason's silence, about the way she leaned back in her chair as if she had already moved me into a room with linoleum floors and scheduled bingo nights. Edward listened, nodding once, his jaw tight. When I finished, he tapped the stack of deeds. "They wanted to write your ending. Now you'll show them who holds the pen." He produced fresh contracts from his case, an emergency lease agreement, retroactive, with clauses sharp as knives. "Sign here, here, and here," he instructed. My hand didn't tremble. With every stroke of the pen, I felt a layer of fear peel away, replaced by something harder. By noon, the papers were ready. Eviction notices, utility cancellations, letters to the bank halting every automatic transfer I had set up for Jason and Kiara's comforts. Their car, their vacation fund, even the ridiculous chandelier Kiara had insisted upon. I remembered her gushing about it once, how the crystals sparkled like Paris in springtime. She never knew it was my money making them glisten. I should have felt guilt, perhaps, but instead I felt a strange calm. They had mistaken generosity for weakness. They had mistaken patience for senility. Now they would taste what real boundaries sounded like. The phone rang just as Edward closed his case. Jason's name flashed on the screen. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me wanted to hear his voice, to measure whether there was still a sun behind the mask Kiara had stitched onto him. "Mom," he said, breathless, "you left so quickly last night. Are you okay?" I could almost believe the worry was real. Almost. "Jason, I need you to come over," I said, alone. He hesitated. Kiara and I were just about to look at houses near Sunset Gardens. The words slid from his mouth like rehearsed lines. I cut him off. "No, Jason. If you bring her, I won't open the door. Come now, or on Monday you'll learn everything in a way far less pleasant." There was a long silence. When he finally whispered, "Mom, you're scaring me," I replied, "You should be," and I hung up. The house was quiet except for the tick of the grandfather clock Robert had bought at an estate sale 30 years ago. Each second stretched like thread being pulled too tight. I walked through the rooms, touching the corners where Jason had once left fingerprints, the wall where his height had been marked each birthday, the stain on the carpet from grape juice spilled at 7. Nostalgia rose like smoke, but I waved it away. Memories could not excuse betrayal. 45 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Jason stood on the porch, shoulders hunched, eyes darting like a boy caught in a lie. I let him in. He sat on the couch where he had once curled up to watch Disney movies, and I sat across from him in Robert's chair, the seat of authority in this house. "Jason," I began, sliding a folder across the coffee table, "do you know who owns the house you live in?" He frowned, confusion giving way to arrogance. "It's ours. We pay the mortgage." "No," I said softly, "you don't." I watched his eyes skim the document, watched the color drain from his face. The deed bore my name. The truth pressed into him like a hand on his chest. This can't be," he stammered. 3 years ago, when you were about to lose everything, I paid the debt. I saved you, and you never knew because I didn't want to shame you." My voice cracked only slightly. "But last night you shamed me." He looked up, eyes wet, searching for mercy. I gave him none. "On Monday, you'll receive an eviction notice. You have 1 week." "Mom, we're family," he pleaded. "Last night you made it clear I am not." The words hung heavy between us. Finally, he rose, stumbling toward the door as if the weight of the papers had bent his spine. When he left, the silence of the house wrapped around me again, but this time it was no longer suffocating. It was armor. By the next morning, the phone began its assault. Unknown numbers, distant relatives, voices I hadn't heard in years, each carrying Kiara's poison. "How could you be so cruel? She told us you're losing your memory. Your own son needs you and you're throwing him out?" Their accusations buzzed in my ear like flies. I answered calmly, correcting them one by one, but I knew the campaign was only beginning. Kiara was building her case, the story of the senile old woman unfit to make her own decisions. By noon, 12 calls had come and gone. I unplugged the phone, poured another cup of coffee, and let the bitterness settle on my tongue. That was when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw a woman in a tailored coat, clipboard in hand. Her eyes were sharp, clinical. "Mrs. Sterling?" she asked when I opened the door a crack. "I'm Dr. Vega. Your daughter-in-law contacted me, very concerned about your mental state. She asked me to conduct an evaluation." The audacity stole my breath for a moment, but then I found my voice, cold and steady. "Doctor, unless you have a court order, you will not step foot in my home." Her brows knit. "Sometimes patients with cognitive decline—" "I am 65, not 95. I manage my finances, I read, I drive. What I do not do is allow strangers in on the command of a scheming woman." Dr. Vega blinked, surprised by my clarity. She nodded reluctantly and stepped back. "Very well. Good day." When the door closed, I pressed my back against it, trembling, not with fear, but with rage. Kiara had escalated. She was not going to stop until she painted me as incompetent. But if she thought I would fold, she had misjudged me entirely. I reached for the phone again. "Edward," I said when he answered, "she just sent a doctor to my door. Without consent, without reason, this is war." When the door closed behind Dr. Vega, I stood in my hallway, heart pounding against my ribs like fists on a locked door. Rage burned in me, but beneath it was something new, clarity, the kind that slices clean through fog. Enough, I thought. No more quiet endurance, no more polite retreats. That afternoon, Jason returned. He didn't knock timidly this time. He banged on the door as if demanding entry into his own home. Through the peephole, I saw Kiara beside him, her mouth tight with fury. I opened just enough for my voice to slip out. "Jason, I told you to come alone." "Mom, this is ridiculous. We need to talk together." His voice cracked, half pleading, half commanding. "No," I said. "If she's with you, you're not coming in." Kiara leaned forward, her perfume cloying even through the narrow crack. "Eleanor, don't make this harder. We're trying to help you. You're not thinking clearly. Everyone sees it." I steadied my breath. What everyone sees is a woman drawing her first real boundary. And you, Kiara, don't like walls you can't climb. Her eyes narrowed. Jason looked trapped between us, his loyalty pulled taut like a rope about to snap. "Mom, please, just listen to her. I've listened enough. Now you'll listen to me." I swung the door wide, stepped onto the porch, and looked straight at them. My voice carried across the yard for the neighbors watering their lawns to hear. "You humiliated me in public. You plotted to lock me away. That ends today. You have 7 days to leave my house. On Monday, the sheriff will hand you the papers." The silence was brutal. A dog barked down the street. A car slowed, rubber on asphalt, whispering like an audience holding its breath. Jason's face drained of color. "You can't mean that." "I can, I do. And if you try to smear my name again, I'll make sure every lie you've told collapses under the weight of truth." Kiara's mask slipped. Her smile vanished, replaced by raw venom. "You selfish old witch. You'd rather throw your son onto the street than admit you need help?" I felt the insult slice across my chest, but I did not flinch. I'd rather lose a son than lose myself. Jason's mouth opened, then closed again. For the first time, he had no words. I turned and walked back inside, shutting the door with a finality that echoed through the house. That was the moment the line was drawn, and I knew the price would come. The backlash began within hours. My phone, still plugged back in, shrieked with call after call. Carmen, Kiara's sister, her voice sharp as knives. "How could you? You're destroying your own family." Then a cousin I hadn't spoken to in 10 years. "They told us you've lost your mind, Eleanor. Everyone's worried." Even Teresa, my sister in Arizona, called, her tone uncertain. "Jason says you kicked them out for no reason. Is that true?" Each voice carried Kiara's fingerprints. She had prepared this campaign long before the birthday dinner, laying bricks of suspicion, whispering about memory lapses, exaggerating every forgotten detail. Now she lit the fuse. By evening, 12 calls had come, each one another stone thrown at my resolve. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at Robert's empty chair, and felt the weight of isolation press in. The house was mine, but the world outside was turning against me. The next day, the smear grew louder. Social media posts spread. Cousins I barely knew tagging each other, Kiara's friends sharing concern about the elderly woman spiraling. Neighbors eyed me strangely at the grocery store. The cashier asked if I needed help counting my change, her smile too sympathetic, too rehearsed. The humiliation seared. For a moment, I considered hiding, retreating into silence. But then I remembered Kiara's voice at the restaurant. "This is your last meal before assisted living." The way Jason's eyes dropped to his napkin, complicit. That memory hardened me. On Sunday morning, Jason returned, this time alone. He stood on my porch with red-rimmed eyes, clutching a stack of papers Kiara had clearly forced into his hands. "Mom," he said, "please reconsider. This eviction, it's not right. You're not yourself." I opened the door fully, let him inside, and motioned toward the couch. "Sit." He did, shoulders slumped. I placed the deeds in front of him again, the ones bearing my name. "Read them until you believe them." He flipped through the pages, eyes darting, lips moving silently. Finally, he whispered, "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you trust me?" I almost laughed. "Trust you? Jason, you've been letting your wife convince the world I'm crazy. You've let her speak for you, think for you. When was the last time you came here without asking for money?" His silence was answer enough. Tears welled in his eyes. "I didn't want it to come to this. She said it was for your own good." "For my good? To strip me of my home? To label me incompetent? That isn't good, Jason. That's betrayal." He covered his face with his hands, shoulders shaking. "I don't know how to fix this." "You don't. You face it." My voice was steel. "You leave my house. You deal with the consequences." That's the price of the boundary I've drawn." For the first time, he saw the full force of my resolve. He stood slowly, tears streaking his face. "I'm sorry, Mom." "Sorry won't give me back dignity," I said, and walked him to the door. That night, I sat in my study, sorting through documents for Edward. The lamplight cast a warm glow on the papers, but my chest ached. I had dreamed of a family that would carry me gently through old age, not one I would have to drag into accountability. The ache deepened when Teresa called again. "Eleanor," she said softly, "are you sure? Jason says—" "Teresa," I interrupted, "do you think I've lost my mind?" "No, of course not, but—" "Then stop repeating his lies. If you doubt me, I'll send you the documents." There was silence on the line, heavy and disappointed. "Send them," she said finally, and hung up. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the exhaustion roll over me. This was the price. To draw a line meant to stand on it alone, at least at first. The following morning, the doorbell rang. Not Jason, not Kiara. A stranger. A woman in pearls introducing herself as Dr. Vega's colleague. Another evaluation. "No," I said, before she could even step inside. "Tell my daughter-in-law that if she wants me declared incompetent, she can try in court. Until then, stay off my porch." The woman blinked, flustered, then retreated. When the door closed, I pressed my forehead to the wood and exhaled. It had begun, the campaign to erase me. But they didn't know that every attempt only sharpened my edge. That evening, Edward came with updates. "They're preparing to fight you, Eleanor, but you have every advantage. You just need to endure the noise." Endure. That word struck deep. Because endurance had been my curse for years, enduring Kiara's digs, Jason's neglect, the quiet erosion of respect. But now endurance had a new shape, not passive, but active, enduring like a tree in a storm, bending but unbroken. I poured us both a glass of wine, the same vintage I had sipped the night Kiara thought she had won. The glass caught the light, crimson swirling like blood. "Let them come," I said. "This time, I won't bend backward, I'll stand." Edward raised his glass. "Then it begins." And I knew the price of drawing a line was loneliness, ridicule, and fear. But the reward was mine, too. Dignity reclaimed, a voice sharpened, a future wrested back from hands that had tried to steal it. That night, I slept not as a victim, but as the author of my own defense. The following week bled into a fog of accusations. My phone became a weapon turned against me. Every ring carried venom, neighbors hinting that I had lost touch, relatives suggesting gently, too gently, that maybe Kiara was right. The words landed like stones, unstable, senile, cruel. I stopped answering after the 15th call, but silence wasn't kinder. Each time I stepped outside, eyes followed me. At the market, Mrs. Green from across the street touched my arm with that pitying look. "Eleanor, dear, maybe it's time you accepted a little help. We all worry." Her voice dripped with rehearsed sympathy, the kind that sticks like honey but tastes like rot. I smiled faintly, pushing my cart past her, but inside something cracked. Had I miscalculated? Could Kiara's narrative truly outweigh my years of competence? By Friday, a letter arrived in my mailbox. No return address, just my name scrawled. Inside, words cut in thick black ink. "Give up before you destroy your son. Families don't forgive witches." My hands trembled as I held the page. For the first time since that birthday dinner, I felt fear, not of Kiara, but of the loneliness pressing in. If everyone turned against me, what then? That night, I sat in the darkened living room, wine untouched, staring at the portrait of Robert. "You always believed people showed their true selves in a storm," I whispered. "Well, the storm is here, and I feel like I'm drowning." The doorbell rang. My heart jolted. For a breath, I imagined Kiara on the porch again, ready to pound until the police arrived. But when I peeked through the curtain, I saw Edward's familiar silhouette, briefcase in hand. I opened the door with relief so sudden it hurt. He stepped inside, laid the briefcase on the table, and studied my face. "You haven't been sleeping," he said quietly. "I don't know how to anymore." My voice cracked. "They're everywhere, Edward. Neighbors, cousins, people I barely know, they all think I'm crazy. Maybe I am foolish for fighting this alone. He set a folder in front of me. You're not alone, and you're not foolish. You just need evidence, louder than her lies. He opened the folder. Medical records from Dr. Ramirez, the neuropsychologist's evaluation, each page confirming my clarity, my competence. He tapped the signatures at the bottom. Hard proof. This makes her smear campaign toothless. Tears burned my eyes. For days I had felt the walls closing in, and now here was a crack of light. But Edward wasn't finished. He pulled another document, a restraining order draft. Detective Morales suggested this. Kiara's harassment is escalating. If she tries another stunt, you'll have legal grounds to keep her away. My fingers brushed the paper. Relief mingled with sorrow. Edward, I never imagined needing protection from my own family. He placed a hand over mine. Family isn't defined by blood when blood poisons you. His words steadied me, but the ache of isolation still pressed. Even Teresa doubts me, I confessed. She thinks I've lost my mind. Send her the evidence, Edward said simply. If she chooses lies over truth after seeing this, that's her burden, not yours. That night, I scanned the documents and emailed them to Teresa, attaching a note with no plea, only facts. Judge me by what's real, not by Kiara's whispers. Then I shut the laptop and waited, unsure if silence or anger would come back. The next morning, the phone rang again. This time, Teresa's name lit the screen. My chest tightened as I answered. Her voice was trembling. Eleanor, I read everything. God, I can't believe what Jason and Kiara have done. I'm so sorry for doubting you. I closed my eyes, letting her words wash over me. You believed them because you wanted to. We all want to think family means safety, but sometimes it means danger. I should have trusted you from the start. What matters is that you see now, I whispered. For the first time in weeks, I felt less alone. That afternoon, Teresa called again, fiercer this time. I've spoken to a few relatives. I showed them the documents you sent me. Some are still skeptical, but others, they believe you now. The tide can shift, Eleanor. We just have to keep speaking louder than Kiara. Her faith, added to Edward's steady counsel, stitched me back together. The loneliness didn't vanish, but it shrank enough for me to breathe. 2 days later, another envelope slid under my door. This time, not a threat, but a notice. The official eviction order prepared by Edward, stamped and signed, ready for Monday service. Holding it, I felt both power and grief. The line I had drawn was no longer invisible. It was law. That night, as rain lashed the windows, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood before Robert's portrait again. I almost gave up, I admitted softly. But Edward gave me weapons. Teresa gave me belief. And you gave me a spine I forgot I had. The rain beat harder, like applause against glass. I raised the glass in a silent toast. They wanted me invisible. But tomorrow, the world will see me stand. And for the first time since the dinner, I didn't tremble when I turned off the lights. Monday came on like a held breath. I woke before the alarm, dressed in a navy sweater, and clipped my pearls into place. I brewed coffee, stacked the folders Edward had prepared on the kitchen table, and waited for the knock that would turn boundary into law. At 8, Edward pulled into the driveway. He walked in without small talk, set his briefcase down, and met my eyes. "It's time," he said. I nodded and slipped the folders into my tote. The sheriff arrived a moment later, the county seal stamped on the notice that would end a long season of pretending. We drove to Maple Street in a quiet convoy. My house looked back at me, dressed in their colors and curtains. The sheriff knocked. Jason opened the door with sleep still clinging to his face. Behind him, Kiara stood like a blade. The sheriff handed Jason the envelope. "You've been served," he said, polite and final. 7 days to vacate. Jason's mouth opened, then closed. 7 days? 7, I answered. You have spent years asking, taking, explaining later. I am done with later. Kiara plucked the papers from Jason's hands and skimmed them. "We can contest this," she said to him, not to me. "Any judge will see she's not thinking clearly." I pulled a second envelope from my tote and held it out to my son. Then perhaps the judge can also consider these. $35,000 drawn from my account in careful drips, transfers that do not bear my signature. Color bled from Jason's face. Kiara laughed, a brittle crack in the air. Forgery. Elderly confusion. The sheriff cleared his throat. These are notarized reproductions. If you have questions, speak to counsel. For the first time, Kiara's voice faltered. She folded the notice and steadied herself with rage. You will not embarrass us like this. I looked past her, at their curated smiles on the hallway wall. Embarrassment is a costume. Consequence is a coat you wear through winter. I turned and walked to the car before grief could unmake my spine. By noon, I had sent everything to the relatives who had been calling to diagnose me from a distance. The bank records, copies of the deed with my name, and 3 audio clips Kiara had not known I captured. In one, her voice slid through the speaker like oil. We only have to make her look incompetent long enough to get the house. In another, she mocked my pearls, calling them grandma beads. I did not add commentary. I let her speak for herself. Teresa called first. Eleanor, I played those recordings for the cousins, she said. Some deleted their posts. Some cried. This is turning. On Wednesday, Edward and I met Detective Morales at the precinct. A screen glowed with the paused image of a pawn shop counter. The clerk pressed play. There they were, Jason in a collared shirt, Kiara at his side, both pretending to be calm as they slid a velvet pouch across glass. The jeweler lifted my grandmother's brooch, turned it under the light, weighed it without reverence. He handed over a receipt. When the clip ended, the detective stopped the video and looked at me. They took $2,000 in cash, he said. We have the itemized list of what was sold. Do you wish to press charges? I thought of Jason at 5, cheeks flushed from sprinklers. I thought of Robert clasping the pearls at my neck. Yes, I said. I do. Outside, the evening light was thin and metallic. The garden at home looked stripped and honest, stems trimmed back, ground ready for cold. Cutting back is not killing, it is protection. That night, Jason came to my door again. He pounded until the porch light shook. I opened it just enough to keep the heat in. Mom, please, we can make this right. I can get the jewelry back. I slid a printed still into the crack. His face on glossy paper, hand on the pouch, Kiara at his shoulder. You can't buy back what you traded for comfort. She said it was temporary, he whispered. She said we would win it all back. You believe in magic now? I asked. You sold history for a weekend in a robe. You took from me with the hand I taught to write its name. Behind him, Kiara stepped closer, composure fraying. Do you really want to be the woman who puts her own son in prison? I want to be the woman who stops pretending stealing is love. I raised my voice, not to shout, but to carry, because neighbors had begun to lift blinds. I will not be the mother who teaches the world that blood excuses anything. Lights blinked on up and down the street. Kiara's eyes flicked toward the houses, calculation snapping back. You're humiliating yourself, she said. No, I answered. For the first time, I am refusing humiliation. I closed the door, set my back against it, and let my heart pound itself quiet. On Friday, Edward and I walked the marble hall of the courthouse. The clerk stamped our filings with a final thunk. Theft, fraud, harassment. Paper is thin, but it holds weight when the ink is right. By lunchtime, Morales called to say Jason had been picked up at work without incident. Kiara had vanished, a ghost made of debts and dresses. Teresa flew in that evening. We sat at the kitchen table, hands around warm mugs. You are the bravest woman I know, she said. I shook my head. No, I am finished pretending weakness buys peace. Saturday brought one more turn. Morales phoned with the results of a search I had hoped would come. Online betting accounts, he said. Tens of thousands, all in Kiara's name. Your son co-signed a personal loan. She has been bleeding him dry. He paused. It explains his fear. It does not absolve his choices. I understand, I said. Compassion is not permission. On Sunday, I went back to church. The sanctuary smelled like lemon oil and old songbooks. I took my place near the back and let the choir's first note settle. After the service, Mrs. Green approached, hands twisting a program. I'm sorry, she said. I believed her. I didn't ask you. Next time, I told her. Believe actions, not whispers. She nodded. That evening, Edward stopped by with a final folder. The accounts are frozen. A restitution plan is on the judge's desk. We can't get the jewelry back, but the law recognizes what happened. He looked at me. You did it, Eleanor. You drew the line and didn't step off when it cut. After he left, I stepped into the garden with a basket of bulbs. The dirt was cold and clean under my nails. I knelt where Robert liked to kneel and pressed the bulbs into earth. Planting is faith written small. You put hope where no one can see and trust that winter isn't the end. They told me to be quiet for the sake of family, but quiet is where we disappear. I am done disappearing. The sky went from pewter to ink. A wind chime shook. I brushed soil from my palms and looked at my house, my windows, my roof, my light. Mine because I earned it, kept it, fought for it when the people who should have protected me tried to sell it for a weekend by a fake blue pool. This is not the story of a mother who destroyed her son. This is the story of a woman who refused to be erased, who let the truth walk into daylight and did not apologize for the way it made shadows look. If there is a lesson, it is simple and expensive. Love without respect is a leash, and the hands that hold it tighten until you cannot breathe. On Monday, there will be hearings and signatures. Jason will stand before a judge. Kiara will run until guilt outruns her, and I will make coffee, water the garden, and answer the door only when I choose. Dignity does not slam. It opens and closes with a steady hand. They tried to write my ending. I took back the pen. I am not a cautionary tale. I am a boundary with a name. 6 months later, spring returned to the city, and with it came a strange kind of quiet. The hearings had finished, the dust had settled, and the house felt lighter than it had in years. Jason was serving his sentence, 8 months in jail, followed by probation and restitution payments. Kiara had disappeared altogether, leaving nothing but unpaid debts and unanswered questions. Some said she had fled the state. Others whispered she had reinvented herself under a new name. For me, her absence was not a mystery to solve, but a relief to accept. My own life shifted in ways I had never anticipated. At first, the silence felt brutal. After decades of living as someone's wife, someone's mother, the empty hours pressed down. But slowly, deliberately, I began to fill them with choices of my own. I joined a book club at the community center, signed up for painting classes, even planted a small patch of tulips and roses in the back garden. The soil answered my hands like it had been waiting for them. Maria, the caregiver I hired, came every afternoon. At first, I thought of her as insurance, proof to doubters that I could acknowledge help when I needed it. But she became a friend, someone who laughed with me over burnt cookies and walked beside me on quiet evenings. I realized then that help is not weakness when you choose it for yourself. Teresa visited often. Our relationship deepened in the wake of betrayal, as if truth had burned away every false layer. She reminded me that family can still be found among the ashes, not in the ones who tried to erase me, but in those who stood firm once they saw the truth. Jason wrote me letters from jail. At first, I left them unopened on the mantel, the envelopes staring at me like small ghosts. Eventually, curiosity overcame anger. His words were shaky, penitential, full of apologies and revelations about Kiara's gambling and manipulation. He admitted his own cowardice, his blindness, his choices. One letter ended with, "Mom, I don't ask for forgiveness. I only ask for a chance to build a life not built on lies." I didn't know if forgiveness was possible, but I knew accountability was. For the first time, he was facing it without hiding behind his wife's voice. That was a beginning, however small. Then, one autumn afternoon, a young man knocked on my door. He introduced himself as David, Jason's son from a relationship before Kiara. I had never known he existed. He was 20 in college, with Jason's eyes but a steadiness all his own. He told me Jason had found him online, confessed the family chaos, and encouraged him to meet me. David became a regular visitor, helping in the garden, listening to my stories about Robert, asking questions about the history Kiara had tried to bury. He didn't excuse his father's choices, but he didn't condemn him completely either. People break, he told me one evening as we shared tea, but they can be pieced back together, sometimes differently, sometimes better. I didn't know if Jason would ever earn that chance, but I knew David had given me something I thought was gone forever: hope. 1 year after the infamous dinner at Bella Vista Grill, Teresa and I returned to the same restaurant. We sat at a corner table, the light slanting in warm across the white tablecloths. The manager approached, recognition in his eyes. "Mrs. Sterling," he said, "we still talk about that night. The way you carried yourself, it was unforgettable." I smiled. Unforgettable isn't always comfortable, but sometimes it's necessary. Teresa reached across the table, squeezed my hand. "You reclaimed your story in the very place they tried to end it." That night, as I walked home, I felt lighter. The weight of shame, fear, and silence had been replaced with something sturdier: self-respect. I often think back to the moment Kiara declared, "This is your last meal before assisted living." I remember the laughter, the silence, the sting of betrayal. But what followed was not exile. What followed was awakening. If there's a truth I carry forward, it's this: love without respect is only an echo, fading faster than you can catch it. And dignity is not negotiable. I tell you this because too many of us believe endurance is loyalty. We believe silence keeps peace, but peace bought by humiliation is not peace at all. If my story proves anything, it's that boundaries are not cruelty. They are survival. So I ask you, what would you have done if your own child tried to erase you? Would you have stayed quiet for the sake of appearances, or would you have chosen the harder path, the one lined with loneliness, but paved with truth? If my journey touched something in you, share your story. Let others know they are not alone. Tell me where you're watching from. I want to know the cities, the towns, the hearts listening across this wide world. And if you believe dignity should never be negotiable, join me at Roots and Secrets. Subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comments, and help carry stories like mine into the light. Because in the end, survival isn't enough. We deserve to live free, respected, and unafraid, even when the threat comes from those closest to us.